once again, thank you so much for joining us on your current affairs that brings the news in detail. A look at the stories for this week. Climate change, global warming, and all such terms describing a world concern. The world is bearing the brunt of climate change through severe weather patterns and droughts, among others. Reducing triggers of climate change like deforestation and degradation is a call to the global community.
But this time, we don't have those powers. If somebody cuts a tree, I have no powers to go and apprehend that person and give punishment there and then.
Reintroduction of the windfall tax on mines, restoration of the Barotseland Agreement, and a new constitution within 90 days were among the many promises.
That is within our 90 days program, the production of a better constitution where Michael Sata will be controlled by the constitution.
It is now clear the Patriotic Front government is having difficulties honoring its promises, while in some cases the PF has outrightly U-turned.
And when people talk about the constitution, we just ignore them.
I'm Francesca Piribanda, and you're watching The Scoop. Now, Zambia's new constitution hangs in balance if recent remarks by President Sata regarding the documents are anything to go by. However, the aborted new constitution-making process is one of the many failed promises of the Patriotic Front government. We put the question to a political analyst: why is the PF government and President Sata in particular failing to honor the many promises he pledged to the Zambians prior to being into office?
It is therefore disappointing that we are now 2.5 years with the PF in government, and there is no clear indication of where we are going on the constitution. If anything, the president's statements suggest that the PF government is not committed to a new constitution, because we are being asked as to why we should be talking about constitution when there's a constitution already. But PF government promised a constitution in 90 days. It's 2.5 years after the promise of 90 days, but still it appears it's not really a priority with the government.
In government, we wanted a constitution and an improvement on 1996 Manakato Constitutional Review Commission, but we differed with the Rupia Banda and his George Kunda, because Rupia Banda and George Kunda wanted to make money out of constitutional making process. When they said constitutional conference, whatever, NCC, National Constitution, or whatever they call it, it has never been done in Zambia. And all they were more interested is the allowances which they were receiving at that National Constitutional Conference.
Words of hope for a country where people had lost trust in the ruling movement for multi-party democracy after 20 years of being in power. As an opposition leader, Michael Sata was a populist championing the causes of the poor in the face of the MMD's economic reform policies. Sata's electoral campaign focused primarily on the eradication of corruption and promised Zambians lower taxes, more jobs, and more money in their pockets. In addition, Mr. Sata promised to transform Zambia within 90 days. In these 90 days, Mr. Sata promised Zambians a new constitution, the cessation of Barotseland, and the reintroduction of windfall tax.
That is within our 90 days program, the production of a better constitution where Michael Sata will be controlled by the constitution.
And after 10 years of being in the opposition, he won the elections by 43%. With this self-assigned period of time, President Sata and his government are yet to fulfill their 90-day promises. Political analyst Dr. Nielsen Mutani says it is clear that the Patriotic Front has made a U-turn on issues that made people vote the party into power, matters that people hold so closely to their hearts.
The PF, as an opposition party, was very forthright in opposing clauses that the MMD did not want implemented. 50% plus one, the appointment of the Vice President as a running mate, the appointment of Minister of National Parliament, and those were the reasons why the Constitution Amendment Bill of 2011 did not succeed, because PF actually did not support it. And we were promised, Zambian people were promised, we have evidence to the effect that the president, then opposition leader, Mr. Michael Sata, said that once in power, the PF government would deliver a constitution within 90 days. Not 90 months, but 90 days. 3 months to be specific.
Dr. Simutani goes on to explain that President Sata tricked the people of Western Province when he said there would be a cessation of Barotseland as a separate state.
As president of Patriotic Front, did undertake that he will resolve the Barotseland issue. In fact, he said very specifically, and you, Movie TV, have a clip of his speech, which I was privileged to watch. He said that he will restore the Barotseland agreement within 90 days. It was among the many 90-day promises. So there's no ambiguity about what the president promised he would do. And when he came to power, the first things he did was to release the people that were detained by the former president Rupia Banda's government. And he appointed a commission of inquiry led by an eminent lawyer, Roger Chongwe. The recommendations of the Chongwe Commission were rubbished by the president when he said he cannot have the Barotseland agreement restored because it will raise issues by other chiefdoms.
In his campaign, President Sata said his government would relook at the taxation system for mining companies, but up to now, nothing has been done. Dr. Simutani says Mr. Sata owes the people of Zambia an explanation.
The windfall tax issue was a campaign issue by the Patriotic Front in 2006. It was an effective campaign issue, and it gained Patriotic Front the votes for the Core Belt. I think one of the reasons why the PF did very well in 2006 was the fact that they actually exposed the fact that the mines were making lots of money and the government was charging very little for that. And because of that, the Mwanawasa government introduced windfall tax to address a demand or a pledge that the PF had actually said they would do if they came to power. Windfall tax is no longer a priority for the PF government, but they've not been able to explain it well to the Zambian people because they were advocates of windfall tax. Like many other things they advocated for, they have difficulty to actually climb down and explain we were wrong, forgive us, maybe, we now realize that we cannot do it that way. Instead, they have actually not really come out to explain why the windfall tax cannot be implemented. I know that a number of NGOs are still demanding that windfall tax still be imposed.
President Sata was keen on Zambia having a new constitution, saying with the current constitution, there was too much power vested in the president.
Provide security of tenure. Once you provide security of tenure, you find that the president will have not too much power. And only an inefficient president wants to have too much power. But otherwise, if each one of us has to contribute to the well-being of Zambia, you don't need to heap all the powers in one man.
Well, now that the tables have turned, President Sata is clearly enjoying those powers and has asked his members to ignore anyone talking about the Constitution.
Don't talk about the Constitution, because when you are taking oath, you are talking about the Constitution. And when people talk about the Constitution, we just ignore them.
His comments come after taxpayers' money has been spent on the technical committee drafting the Zambian Constitution. Climate change has become a global concern, with calls for countries to double efforts. Journalists as communicators gathered last week in Eastern Province district of Nyimba to appreciate concerns regarding climate change. Now, various aspects of the subjects were tackled and a field visit conducted to get a practical view of the impact.
34-year-old Sylvester Tembo of Ben Village in Nyimba district has all his life depended on the forest for survival. He can cut as many trees as he wants, at times even more, just for fun. Mr. Tembo therefore cannot understand the logic and reasoning behind calls to conserve the forest.
Koma pa anapokuti funzisa kuti kusenzesa mitengo mungasenzese bati ifunika na masenzeshedwa kaena munga mamena kambira kudala kuti tenzo sensa chisenzesha kuti penangu ningateme so chimutengo ichi ndipena muna chito achisiya so chabe na ndafuna tema futi chinango so pa anatuza kuti ngatufuna tema chimutengo ufunika kuteme chimutengo chame uzendo senzera nchito noti kutema chimutengo chitemeteme ngati vimitengo pamene vimonga mnatifunzisira kuti tisunge vimitengo nekuti kusogolo vingatipindulire chani.
Maybe with time, Mr. Tembo will come to understand the benefits of preserving the forest, as his village is one of the 8 captured in the Nyimba Forest Project. The project looking at developing a sub-national measuring, reporting and verification model towards the national strategy on reducing carbon emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, REDD+, is being implemented by the Center for International Forestry Research and funded by USAID. Focus group discussions are part of the project mode of sharing information, and like Mr. Tembo, many villagers in Ben Village know the forest is their essence of survival.
Enzofunsa kupari vija vintu vamene mumatenga musanga yake kuno. Mayam isepo. Mafisepo mafruits. Roots. Okay, ma roots kena ngutuma chisa categorize ma roots, ma herbs.
Potent wene kwene kuno kwasu. Tiri nasasu.
Bambu.
Nzizi. Nkuni. Na mipini ya tumbu. Na mfunde yopirira mmang'adi.
Kalas bambwa sasu, setas mai pakena uzu, bankalangati ngani kuyote mafuni. Ngondo nyamu kapake na yenda nangu kuwa wazi so tukaluyenda kuyote mafuni kairo mazili kali mtali so kuyenda wazi.
However, since the project started in 2012, villagers' attitudes are changing, although a lot more needs to be done.
The expectations as the traditional leader is that the benefits of what the people are learning today will improve the future generations, whereby they will know what the importance is for them to care for this environment, because people have noticed the environmental change that is taking place. Basically, the change in rain patterns, the change in say weather in the country and the world as a whole. And for such, they have realized that there is need to protect them.
Senior Chief Luembe of Nyimba district also calls for empowerment of government wings tasked to enforce the law against deforestation and degradation.
The thing that they have brought is education on the importance of the forest to the community. Very few people do understand the scientific meanings of deforestation. But CIFOR has simplified these issues to the community to an extent where they have also appreciated the need to preserve our forests.
His counterpart, Chief Ndake, feels the declining powers of traditional leaders to deal with matters within their chiefdoms has contributed greatly to deforestation and forest degradation.
All this happening, what is it that we can do? And if policies are there, who is going to implement these policies? Who is going to be there to enforce that these things are being done? I think this is the major thing. Because for me, chiefs had so much powers. If somebody cuts a tree, they would send their retainer who has cut this tree and bring that person to book and give the punishment there and then. But this time, we don't have those powers. If somebody cuts a tree, I have no powers to go and apprehend that person and give punishment there and then. You know, if I do that one, there is human rights. No, you can't do this. You are not allowed to do. Finally, the chief ends up being in court himself or herself. So, for me, to a certain extent, we have lost that authority, you know, at that local level.
Journalists from various media organizations toured the project as part of training on covering forests and global climate change in Zambia. They witnessed how a forest inventory is conducted, which among other data collected is the height of trees and diameters.
Project Oku seeks to address the issue of eliminating data that may be so important to this inventory. We may be aware that some of the data, such as charcoal production or charcoal kilns, may not be encountered on the actual plot we have noticed just here.
Center for International Forestry Research, Zambia project leader, Dr. Devson Gumbo, noted the need for media understanding of climate change, its effects and intervention measures in place.
We needed to do was make an effort to expose journalists to issues pertaining to environment, climate change, environment and forestry. So from what I have seen today, for the last 2 days, this was a very worthwhile process to go through. You also hear from the journalists that there is an appreciation, that there's some new knowledge that has been gained which needs to be applied. I think the most exciting one is obviously DPH from the point of some of the journalists. But generally, the new terms that came up, that have been talked about, that have been, I think, rehashed as we went through the 2 days, I think, to me, demonstrate that kind of exposure that we wanted journalists to go through. We will supply you with information where we are in a position where we are satisfied that the information is not controversial. The last thing that we want to do is feed media with information that is half-cooked. So we'd rather kind of deliver to you what we think is useful. The second thing is you guys are free to come and ask for information. And together we will discuss it. We will see the value in it and together agree on what we should put out to the public.
Earlier, in an indoor discussion, officials from the Zambia Wildlife Authority, ZAWA, and Forest Department, Eastern Region, shared on the challenges they face to adequately deal with deforestation and forest degradation in the region.
The level of exploitation that has been observed, it's at a larger scale than we could, we used to actually experience previously. And as such, what has been done is that there's a new set of concession or licensing conditions that have been put in place. And those are the ones that we are encouraging all those that are exploiting that particular timber to follow, instead of them just going the way it is now. It's like it's even difficult to regulate, because all the individuals now, I would say all the people that are around those villages are in that particular business, and for us to,
chiefs will go into it.
For us to, For us to regulate it has been a very big challenge for us to regulate, because usually there are cases where we find trucks. The only means of monitoring that we have been using is mounting of roadblocks, either at Ruangwa or at Kacholola. But in certain instances, because that community is quite big, when they hear that the officers at the checkpoint will stay maybe 3-4 days, they will find no truck. Then the moment they just hear that there are no officers, then it goes. But I'll still come back to what Dr. Gumbo has mentioned. There's this demand for this timber by Chinese companies in Lusaka. If that demand is not addressed, I think this challenge that we are talking about will still continue, because as long as the demand is there, people need money.
Most of the production of charcoal is not in the forest reserves. Most of it is in the customary land. So when somebody, lucky enough, if somebody still came and got a license, that license is a regulatory instrument or tool which should be managed. So one should follow up the license area, where the wood is being cut, where the manufacturing is taking place, and actually supervise that production, as I earlier talked about in terms of the hoops.
The information shared, coupled with a field tour, was an eye-opener to journalists in covering environmental reporting.
Experience has been very good in that I have learned a lot, or rather to be more relevant in reporting on our environment. And most of the issues that we used to overlook, I think, I've been encouraged to rethink my position, even as an editor at my institution. I think I'll allocate more time to reporting on the environment. And especially that I'm ashamed, so to say, to review that I realized that even in the issue of the lower Zambezi region, we just concentrated on politics, but not really analyzing issues surrounding the environment and bringing them out, because these are more beneficial to our nation. And I think if we did that as journalists, it could have even helped government maybe to make a right decision.
I've learned a lot, especially in terms of differentiating between terminologies. For instance, charcoal burning, charcoal producing, deforestation, degradation. I've actually discovered that all along we've been mixing things up. So I think that has really helped, where charcoal burning is done by us, the final users, and then charcoal production is done by the people who actually go in the fields, cut down the trees, burn it up, and send it for selling.
I think that the journalists have not done a good job in terms of environmental reporting. Quite often they blame the editor for turning down environmental ideas, but an editor is interested in good story ideas, whether it's environmental, economic, or politics. Most often they are poorly pitched, and when they are finally written, the execution is very bad, which is mainly because maybe they don't have the knowledge or they are disinterested.
For villagers in Ben Village, whether they understand or not issues of global climate change, that may be immaterial at this stage. However, one thing clear is that they have embraced the concept and are able to sit down and engage each other as they take ownership of the Nyimba Forest Project.
Now time for our proverb of the week. The proverb says, good behavior starts from the top. The proverb from South Africa says, good behavior starts from the top. Remember, you can interact with us on our Facebook page, Ask Movie, or you can send us a text. All you have to do is type ASK, leave a space, type your message, and send it to 3322. On behalf of the entire Scoop team, till we meet next week at the same time, have a lovely week.